Elijah Tanner ripped the photograph in half and let the pieces fall into the dirt. His three-fingered hand wouldn't stop shaking. The stagecoach hadn't even fully stopped yet, and he already knew. The woman climbing down, red-brown hair catching the autumn light, shoulders straight like she was walking into a courtroom instead of a dusty Montana rail stop. She wasn't what he'd asked for. She wasn't plain. She wasn't forgettable. She was the kind of woman who'd crack him wide open and leave him bleeding. Again. If you want to see how Eli and Josie's story unfolds, hit that subscribe button right now and stay with me until the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see just how far this story travels. Now let's get back to that stagecoach stop where Eli Tanner's whole life was about to get torn apart. Eli turned for his horse. Done. Finished. He'd ride back to the Bitterroot Valley, write the agency, demand a refund. Simple. Clean. No damage. Mr. Tanner, her voice caught him mid-step. Not soft, not sweet. Direct. Like a woman who'd spent her whole life cutting through nonsense to get to the point. He didn't turn around. Mr. Tanner, I know you heard me. Ma'am, there's been a mistake. Has there? Eli's jaw clenched. He could feel the other passengers watching. The station manager had stopped pretending to sweep the platform. Two old men on the bench had leaned forward like they were watching a cockfight. He turned. Slowly. She was closer than he expected. Close enough that he could see the dust ground into her traveling coat, the dark circles under her gray eyes, the raw skin on her knuckles where she'd been gripping something hard for days. 3 days on rough roads, 3 days of bad food and worse company, and jolting wagon seats that turned your spine into a punishment. She looked exhausted. She looked like she'd crawl through fire before she'd admit it. The arrangement, Eli started. I was specific about what I needed. You were specific about what you wanted. Those ain't the same thing. I asked for someone plain. You asked for someone safe. Josie Calloway pulled off her traveling gloves one finger at a time. Her hands were calloused. Working hands. Someone who wouldn't make you feel anything. Someone you could keep at arm's length without it costing you. Eli's throat went dry. You don't know a damn thing about me. I know you lost 2 fingers at Gettysburg. I know you've been running 600 acres alone for 4 years, which means you're either the hardest working man in Montana or the most stubborn. I know you wrote 3 letters to that agency, and every single one of them said the same thing. She stepped closer. Don't send anyone who'll make me care. How do you know what my letters said? Because Mrs. Adderley at the agency read them to me. Every word. She thought I should know what I was walking into. Eli felt the ground shift under his boots. Then why the hell did you come? Because I'm tired of being looked at instead of listened to. Josie's voice didn't waver. Because every man back east saw this face and decided I was decoration. Something to put on a shelf and admire. And when I turned out to have opinions and a backbone and a brain that actually worked, they lost interest real fast. She wasn't performing, Eli could tell. He'd spent 4 years reading cattle and horses and weather and men who wanted to kill him. He knew performance. This wasn't it. I came because your letters were honest, Josie continued. Badly written and misspelled half to death, but honest. Something cold shot through Eli's chest. The misspelling. She'd noticed. And I came because I'd rather be useful than beautiful. But you're about to send me back because of the one thing I can't control. Her eyes locked onto his. So go ahead, Mr. Tanner. Put me back on that stage. But don't pretend it's because I'm not what you need. It's because you're too scared to find out I might be exactly what you need. The station fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Eli's ruined hand curled into a fist at his side. His horse shifted behind him, waiting. Every sane thought in his head screamed the same thing. Let her go. Protect yourself. Beautiful women leave. Margaret proved that. This one would too. But Margaret never looked at him like this. Margaret never stood in dust and exhaustion and spoke to him like he was worth the effort of honesty. 1 month, Eli heard himself say. Josie's eyes narrowed. What? 1 month. No wedding. You work the ranch. I see what you're made of. His voice came out rougher than he intended. You can't handle it, you leave. No hard feelings. And if I can handle it? Then we talk. About what? About everything. Josie studied him the way he'd seen horse traders study yearlings, measuring, calculating, deciding if the investment was worth the risk. I'll make you a better deal, she said. 1 month. I work like any hand you'd hire. You don't treat me different because I'm a woman. You don't go easy. You don't protect me from the hard parts. She extended her hand, calloused palm, strong fingers. And you stop looking at me like I'm a problem you need to solve. Eli shook her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. The grip of someone who'd sealed deals before and meant every one of them. My wagon's over there, he said. It's a rough ride. I've had rougher. They didn't speak for the first 30 minutes. The wagon jolted over frozen ruts in the road, and Josie sat straight back beside him, her bag between her feet, her eyes moving across the land with sharp attention. Eli tried not to watch her. Failed. You're staring, Josie said. Just wondering what you're thinking. I'm thinking your fence line hasn't been repaired in 2 seasons. I'm thinking those posts are rotting from the base, which means your soil's holding too much water. And I'm thinking you've been so busy surviving that you haven't had time to actually maintain what you've got. Eli's hands tightened on the reins. You get all that from a moving wagon? I get that from growing up watching my mama run a general store that everyone said would fail. She taught me to look at a place and see what's broken before I see what's working. Saves time. Your mama sounds like a tough woman. She was the toughest person I ever knew. Josie's voice shifted, just slightly, just enough for Eli to hear the crack underneath. Died when I was 14. Fever took her in 3 days. Fastest 3 days of my life, and the slowest. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be useful. That's what she always said. Josie turned to face him. What happened to your hand? The letter said Gettysburg, but they didn't say how. Eli flexed his ruined left hand. 3 fingers gone. The remaining 2 scarred and stiff. Artillery shell hit our position. I was loading a cannon. The blast took the fingers and put shrapnel in my right hip. Does the hip still bother you? Every day. You walk on it wrong. Favor the right side too much. It's making your back compensate. You a doctor now? I'm observant. There's a difference. Josie looked away. My mama had a bad knee. Watched her walk wrong on it for 10 years before she'd let anyone help. Stubborn runs in families, I reckon. They rode in silence for another mile. Then Josie spoke again. How bad is it? The ranch. Really? Eli could have lied. Almost did. But something about the way she'd spoken to him at that station, raw and unafraid, made lying feel wrong. Bad, he said. Lost 40 head last winter. Can't afford hired help. Barn needs work I can't do alone. And there's a man named Judge Harlan Cobb who's been buying up every small spread in this valley. He wants my land for the railroad. Has he made you an offer? 3 times, each one lower than the last. And when you refused? Going wrong. Fence cut, cattle wandering off, supply shipments getting lost between Helena and my place. So he's squeezing you. He's patient about it. That's what makes him dangerous. He doesn't come at you with guns. He comes with lawyers and patience and enough money to wait you out. Josie nodded slowly. I've seen that before. Back in Kansas, a railroad company tried to take my uncle's trading post. Same tactics. Slow pressure. Legal tricks. Making life so hard you sell just to survive. What happened? My uncle fought for 2 years, almost lost everything. Josie's jaw tightened. But he kept records, every threat, every suspicious incident, every document that didn't add up. And when he finally got a federal investigator to listen, the whole scheme fell apart. Your uncle won? My uncle survived. That's not the same as winning. The fight cost him his health, most of his savings, and his marriage. But he kept his land. She paused. He died on that land 3 years later. Alone. But it was his. The cabin came into view. Small. 1 room. Stone fireplace. Eli watched Josie take it in. Foundation's solid, she said. That's what matters. Only 1 room. I noticed. I can sleep in the barn. In October? In Montana? Josie climbed down from the wagon. I'll take a bedroll by the fire. I've shared worse quarters with my sisters growing up. She picked up her bag and walked toward the cabin, stopped at the door, turned. Eli. She caught herself, shook her head. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Go ahead. The letters you sent to the agency, the ones Mrs. Adderley read to me. Josie's voice dropped. Careful. Precise. You didn't write them yourself, did you? The question hit Eli like a mule kick to the chest. What makes you say that? Because the handwriting changed between the first letter and the third. The first one was shaky, big letters, the kind of writing someone makes when they're copying shapes they don't fully understand. The third one was smooth, different hand entirely. Josie's gray eyes held steady on his. Someone helped you. Someone wrote the last 2 for you. Eli's blood turned to ice. 4 years in Montana. 4 years of hiding it. 4 years of avoiding the general store's posted notices, pretending he didn't need to read the newspaper, memorizing prices by asking casual questions instead of reading the tags. His one secret, the one shame he carried deeper than his scars, deeper than Margaret's betrayal, deeper than anything the war had done to him. He couldn't read, could barely write his own name. Sam helped me, Eli said. The words came out like pulled teeth. Samuel Ironhorse. Runs a small place east of mine. He wrote the last 2 letters. And the first one? That one was mine. Eli's voice went flat. Took me 4 hours. Still got half the words wrong. He waited for it. The pity, the disgust, the careful rearrangement of her face into something that pretended not to judge, while judging everything. He'd seen it before, the one time he'd told someone. A shopkeeper in Helena who'd suddenly started speaking to him slower, louder, like he was simple instead of just uneducated. Josie was quiet for a long time. My father couldn't read either, she said finally. Not a word. Signed his name with an X his whole life. It's why my mama ran the store. He did the heavy lifting. She did the books. Josie set her bag inside the door. He wasn't stupid. He was unliterate. There's a damn big difference. And anyone who can't tell them apart isn't worth your time. Eli's throat closed. You're not going to say anything else about it? What would you like me to say? That it changes something? It doesn't. I already knew from the letters that you were smart. Smart enough to survive alone out here. Smart enough to know you needed help, and brave enough to ask for it, even through an agency, even through a stranger's hand. She leaned against the doorframe. The only thing it changes is that now I understand why you really asked for someone plain. What do you mean? You didn't just want someone who wouldn't leave. You wanted someone who wouldn't look too close. Someone who wouldn't notice the things you're hiding. Josie's voice gentled, just barely. Well, I'm sorry about that, Eli, because I notice everything. It's the worst thing about me. Eli stood in the fading light, his ruined hand hanging at his side, and felt something he hadn't felt since before the war. Seen. Not pitied, not judged. Seen. You still want to stay? He asked. Knowing all that? I didn't travel 800 miles to turn around because a man can't read. I traveled 800 miles because I was tired of being somewhere I wasn't needed. Josie straightened. Now, show me where you keep the firewood, because this cabin is cold as a grave, and I intend to fix that before I fix anything else. Eli showed her. That night, as Josie built a fire with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, Eli sat across from her and asked the question he'd been holding since the station. Why me? Out of all the postings at that agency, why pick the one from a broken-down rancher in the middle of nowhere? Josie didn't look up from the fire. Because you were the only one who didn't promise me anything. Every other man in those listings promised a good life, a warm home, children, happiness. Like they were selling something. She placed another log. You promised hard work, bad weather, and loneliness. And I thought, now there's a man who tells the truth. I can build something with a man who tells the truth. What if the truth is that I don't know how to let someone in? What if the truth is that the last woman I trusted married my brother while I was bleeding out in a field hospital? Josie's hands stilled on the firewood. Your brother? My older brother, Thomas. I came home from the war with 2 missing fingers and a hip full of metal. Found Margaret wearing a ring Thomas put on her hand 3 months after I shipped out. Eli's voice went hollow. She said she thought I was dead. Thomas said the same thing, but the dates didn't add up. They never do. Did you confront them? I stood on their porch and looked at them and didn't say a single word. Just turned around and walked away. Bought the first piece of land I could afford, as far from Pennsylvania as I could get. Haven't spoken to either of them since. And you've been alone ever since. Alone is safe. Alone is slow death, Eli. Just takes longer. Josie finally looked at him across the fire. Her face was lit orange and shadow. I'm not Margaret. I'm not going to promise you that because you'll only believe it when I prove it. But I am going to tell you this one time, and I won't say it again. She stood, brushed off her skirt. I don't break my word. Not for convenience, not for comfort, not for anyone. So whatever this month turns out to be, whatever you decide at the end of it, you will never be able to say that Josephine Calloway didn't keep her promises. She walked to her bedroll and lay down with her back to him. Good night, Eli. Eli sat by the fire for a long time after that. Outside, the Montana wind hammered the cabin walls. The horses shifted in the barn. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, and the sound carried across the valley like a question nobody could answer. He looked at the woman sleeping by his fire, a woman who'd crossed 800 miles to find a man who couldn't read, couldn't trust, and couldn't look at a beautiful face without seeing the ghost of every promise that had ever been broken. She'd noticed everything: his hand, his hip, his letters, his shame. She'd noticed all of it, and she'd stayed anyway. Eli pulled the blanket over his shoulders and closed his eyes. He didn't sleep. But for the first time in 4 years, the silence in the cabin didn't feel waiting. 3 days in, Josie hadn't broken, hadn't slowed, hadn't complained once about the cold or the work or the fact that the cabin smelled like smoke and old leather, and a man who'd been living alone too long. Eli woke before dawn on the 4th morning and found her bedroll empty. Again. Cold to the touch, which meant she'd been up for at least an hour. He pulled on his boots, grabbed his coat, and stepped outside into air that burned his lungs. He found her in the barn, crouched beside the foundation stones on the north wall, running her hands along the base. "You've got water coming in under here," she said, without looking up. "Ground's soft. Another hard freeze, and this whole corner shifts." "I know." "So why is it still like this?" "Because fixing it right takes 2 people and a full day of hauling stone." Josie stood, brushed dirt off her knees. "Then today we fix it." "Josie, you've been up since before dawn." "And I'll be up after dark. That's ranch life, ain't it?" She met his eyes. "You going to argue with me, or hand me a shovel?" He handed her a shovel. They worked from first light to last, digging out the old foundation, hauling stone from the creek bed, mixing mortar by hand in a wooden trough. Josie's hands were bleeding by noon. She wrapped them in strips torn from an old shirt and kept working. Eli watched her swing a pick into frozen ground, her whole body behind every stroke. Not trying to prove anything, just working. The way someone works when they've done hard labor their entire life and stopped thinking about whether it's fair or unfair a long time ago. "You're going to tear your hands apart," he said around midday. "They'll heal." "Josie." She stopped, looked at him. "You ever had a hired hand you fussed over this much?" "I never had a hired hand who bled through their wraps before lunch." "Then you never had one who worked hard enough." Josie pulled the pick free and lined up another swing. "My mama used to say calluses are just your body learning what you're asking it to do. Give it time." By dusk, the north wall was shored up solid. Eli ran his hand along the new mortar line and felt it set firm under his fingers. Good work. Work that would hold. "Not bad," he said. "Not bad?" Josie wrung out a rag over the water bucket. Blood turned the water pink. "That's 10 hours of hauling rock in October, and all I get is, not bad?" Something twitched at the corner of Eli's mouth. Not quite a smile. Close enough to make Josie notice. "Was that almost a grin, Mr. Tanner?" "No, ma'am." "Looked like one." Wind moved my face. "Wind." Josie shook her head. "Right." They ate supper in silence. Beans, salt pork, coffee strong enough to strip paint. Josie didn't complain about the food, but on the 5th morning, Eli found her reorganizing his provision shelf with a kind of focused fury that meant she had opinions. "You've been eating like this for 4 years?" she asked. "Keeps me alive." "Barely. You've got no dried fruit, no root vegetables, nothing with any actual sustenance beyond salt and grease." She held up a tin. "This beef is older than some of your cattle." "It's fine." "It's a sin against food, Eli." She put the tin down. "Next trip to Helena, we're buying proper supplies. You can't work a ranch on coffee and stubbornness." "Worked so far. Surviving isn't working. That's what you keep confusing." She turned to face him. "You want to know why you lost 40 head last winter? Because you were too worn down to keep up with the work. A man running on bad food and no sleep makes mistakes. Misses the signs. Lets things slide. That's a lot of judgment from someone who's been here 5 days. It's not judgment, it's observation. And you know I'm right because you're not arguing. You're just getting quiet, which is what you do when you don't want to admit something." Eli stared at her. "You've known me 5 days, and you think you've got me figured out?" "I've got the outline. The details take longer." Josie poured him more coffee. "Drink. We've got a long day." They did. Fence repair along the western boundary, where Eli had been losing cattle through gaps he'd patched with wire and prayer. Josie worked the posts, while Eli strung new wire. They fell into a rhythm without discussing it. She'd brace, he'd hammer. She'd move to the next post before he finished the last one. "You've done this before," Eli said. "My uncle's trading post had a corral that needed mending every spring. Horses are harder on fences than cattle." "Your uncle teach you everything?" "My uncle taught me how to work. My mama taught me how to think." Josie drove a post deeper with a mallet. "There's a difference. Lots of people can work hard. Fewer know how to work smart. And you're the smart one. I'm the one who's still standing, so I reckon that answers itself." On the 7th day, a rider appeared on the eastern ridge. Eli grabbed his rifle before the figure even got close. Josie stepped beside him, her hand shielding her eyes. "Easy," the rider called. "Just me, Eli." Eli lowered the rifle. "Sam." Samuel Ironhorse dismounted with the slow ease of a man who'd spent his whole life on horseback. He was 40, lean, weathered brown, with eyes that noticed everything and a mouth that said about half of what those eyes saw. Crow Nation by blood. Educated at a missionary school he didn't talk about. The only person in Montana Territory who knew Eli Tanner couldn't read. "Heard you got company," Sam said. He looked at Josie. "Ma'am?" "Mr. Ironhorse." "Just Sam." He turned to Eli. "Also heard Dan Beecham sold his place last week. Didn't want to. Got pressured." Eli's jaw tightened. "Cobb?" "Who else? That makes 4 ranches in 2 years. All small operations. All bought for half what they're worth." Sam glanced at the barn. "Noticed you fixed the foundation." "We fixed it," Josie said. Sam's eyebrows went up. He looked at Eli. Eli said nothing. Sam looked back at Josie. "You did foundation work?" "I did the digging, the hauling, and half the mortar mixing. Eli did the other half. It's solid." "I can see that." Sam's voice carried something new. Not surprise exactly. Recalculation. "Eli told me he was expecting someone different." "Eli tells himself a lot of things that ain't true. I'm working on it." Josie didn't smile, but her eyes warmed just enough. "You're the one who wrote his letters." Sam stiffened, looked at Eli. "She figured it out," Eli said flatly. "Day 1. "The handwriting changed between letter 1 and letter 3, Josie explained. "Wasn't hard." Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "You're sharp." "I pay attention. Different thing." "No, ma'am, it's the same thing. Most people just don't do either one." Sam turned back to Eli. "I came to warn you. Cobb's got a new lawyer from back east, man named Prescott. Been going through land records at the Helena office." "For what?" "Looking for gaps, survey errors, anything he can use to file competing claims." Sam's expression went hard. "He's done playing patient, Eli. Beecham selling wasn't enough. He wants the whole valley." Josie's eyes sharpened. "What kind of survey errors?" Both men looked at her. "My uncle fought a land grab in Kansas," she said. "The railroad company tried to prove his property boundaries were wrong by filing a backdated survey. It's a common trick. Create a paper dispute, tie up the real owner in court for years, bleed them dry with legal fees until they sell." Sam studied her for a long beat. "That's exactly what Prescott's been doing." "Then we need to see those records. Every survey, every deed, every filing associated with the properties Cobb's already taken. If there's a pattern of fraud, it'll show." "You think you can find it?" Sam asked. "I found my uncle's in 3 days, and his was buried under 6 years of county filings by a clerk who'd been paid to lose it." Josie's voice went flat. I know how these people work. They count on us being too poor or too uneducated to look at the paperwork. They count wrong. The word uneducated hung in the air. Josie didn't look at Eli when she said it. Didn't need to. They both heard what she meant. She wasn't talking about the ranchers in general. She was talking about him specifically. And she was telling Sam, without telling him, that she knew and that it didn't matter. Sam understood. His eyes moved from Josie to Eli and back. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe. Or relief. I'll ride into Helena tomorrow, Sam said. See what I can dig up at the land office. I'll go with you, Josie said. Josie, Eli started. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't tell me it's dangerous. Don't tell me to stay here where it's safe. If Cobb's people are manipulating records, I need to see those documents myself. I know what to look for. You don't. The truth of it stung. Eli couldn't read. He couldn't examine legal documents, couldn't compare surveys, couldn't spot a forged date or an altered boundary line. Josie could, and they all knew it. Fine, Eli said. But Sam goes with you. I was going to anyway. Sam mounted his horse. I'll be here at first light. He paused, looked at Josie one more time. You're not what I expected. Nobody ever expects me, Sam. That's my advantage. Sam almost smiled. Almost. Then he rode off toward the eastern ridge and disappeared. That night, Josie sat by the fire with a piece of charcoal and a flat board, sketching something. Eli watched from across the room. What are you doing? Making a list. She held up the board, columns and numbers, neat and precise. Everything we need. Supplies, repairs, costs. If we're going to fight Cobb, we need to know exactly where we stand financially. Can't go to war if you don't know what's in the armory. I can't read that. I know. Josie's voice stayed matter-of-fact. No pity, no softness. So I'll read it to you. Every number, every item, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong, because you know this ranch better than anyone. You know what costs what, how much feed a head needs per week, how many posts are rotting. She tapped the board. I've got the literacy. You've got the knowledge. Together, we've got something Cobb doesn't expect. What's that? A complete picture. Eli sat down across from her. Read me what you've got. She did, item by item, number by number, and Eli corrected her where she was wrong. Feed costs were higher than she'd estimated. Wire was cheaper if you bought it from the mill in Virginia City instead of Helena. The mule ate twice what a horse did and worked half as hard, but you couldn't replace him because he was the only animal that could handle the trail to the high pasture in deep snow. They went back and forth for 2 hours. By the end, Josie had filled 3 boards with figures, and Eli had a clearer picture of his own finances than he'd had in 4 years. You've been losing money for 18 months, Josie said quietly. I know. If nothing changes, you'll be bankrupt by next spring, even without Cobb. I know that too. Then why didn't you do something? Eli was quiet for a long time. Because doing something means asking for help. And asking for help means admitting I can't handle it alone. And admitting I can't handle it alone means admitting that everything I've been telling myself for 4 years was a lie. Josie set down the charcoal. What have you been telling yourself? That I didn't need anyone. That alone was enough. That if I could just survive one more winter, one more season, one more year, things would get better on their own. And did they? You know they didn't. Then let me help you, Eli. Not because you're weak, because you've been carrying weight that was always meant for 2 people. Josie's eyes held his across the firelight. That's not failure. That's just math. Something in Eli's chest loosened. Not broke, loosened. Like a fist that had been clenched for years, finally letting go just slightly. "All right," he said. "All right? All right. We do this together. The ranch, Cobb, whatever comes." "Whatever comes," Josie repeated. They sat in that agreement for a while, the fire popping between them. Then Josie reached for the charcoal again. "There's one more thing," she said. "What?" "Sam's going to help me get those records tomorrow. But I need something from you while we're gone." "Name it." "Count the cattle. Every head. Every brand. Write the numbers down." She paused. "I mean, mark them down. Scratches on a stick. Stones in a bucket. However you keep track. Because if Cobb's people have been moving your cattle the way they moved Beecham's, we need to know exactly what we've got before they take more." "You think he's already been stealing from me?" "I think a man who buys 4 ranches in 2 years through intimidation doesn't suddenly develop patience with the 5th. Josie met his eyes. "I think things have been going wrong on this ranch that you blamed on bad luck. And I think at least some of that bad luck had a name." The thought hit Eli like cold water. The 40 head he'd lost last winter. He'd assumed weather, assumed bad grazing. But what if the fences hadn't just fallen? What if someone had cut them? "Son of a bitch," he whispered. "Maybe, but we need proof before we say it out loud. Proof on paper. The kind a judge can't ignore." Eli looked at her. This woman who'd been on his ranch for 7 days and already saw more clearly than he had in 4 years. Not because she was smarter. Because she wasn't tired. Because she wasn't alone. Because fresh eyes see what exhausted ones miss. "Josie." "Yeah?" "I'm glad you didn't get back on that stage." Something moved across her face. Quick, unguarded. Gone. "So am I." She lay down on her bedroll and turned toward the fire. Eli stayed up, watching the embers, thinking about Cobb and Prescott and legal documents he couldn't read, and a woman who could read them for him. He thought about Margaret, tried to compare her to Josie, and couldn't. Margaret had been pretty and pleasant, and had told him everything he wanted to hear, right up until the moment she chose his brother. Josie told him things he didn't want to hear, and then handed him a shovel. He wasn't sure yet which was love. But he was starting to suspect it looked less like promises and more like showing up before dawn to dig rocks out of frozen ground with bleeding hands, and not one single complaint. Outside, the temperature dropped. Somewhere in the darkness, a horse stamped nervously. The kind of stamp that meant something was moving out there. Something that didn't belong. Eli reached for his rifle and listened. Nothing. Just wind. Just cold. Just Montana being Montana. But his hand stayed on the rifle for a long time after, and when he finally slept, he dreamed of fire. Sam arrived before dawn, just like he'd promised. Josie was already waiting by the wagon, her coat buttoned tight, her hands wrapped fresh from yesterday's blisters. Eli stood on the porch, holding his rifle. "You watch her," he told Sam. "She doesn't strike me as someone who needs watching." "Watch her anyway." Josie climbed onto Sam's horse without help. "Count the cattle, Eli. Every head. We'll be back before dark." They rode out. Eli watched them disappear over the ridge and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not loneliness. He knew loneliness like his own heartbeat. This was different. This was the fear of having something to lose. He spent the day counting. Every pasture, every draw, every ravine where cattle liked to bunch against the wind. He used stones in his coat pocket, 1 stone per 10 head. By late afternoon, he had 17 stones. 170 head. He should have had 200. 30 missing. Not 40 like last winter, Not the kind of loss you could blame on weather or wolves. 30 head, gone quiet, gone clean, gone without a single broken fence or track he could find. Josie was right. Cobb had been stealing from him. Slowly, carefully. The way a man bleeds a wound so gradual the body doesn't notice until it's too weak to fight. They came back at dusk. Josie's face told him everything before she said a word. "It's worse than we thought," she said, climbing down from Sam's horse. She carried a leather satchel stuffed with papers. Cobb's lawyer filed 6 surveys in the last 18 months. All of them show boundary lines different from the original deeds. All of them conveniently push property lines in Cobb's favor. "Mine too?" "Yours especially." Josie pulled a folded map from the satchel. "According to this survey, your northern 100 acres don't belong to you. Never did." The survey says that land was part of an unclaimed parcel that the Montana Land and Timber Company purchased last spring. Montana Land and Timber? "Cobb's company," Sam said quietly. "Incorporated 6 months ago. He's the sole owner." Eli felt his blood go hot. "That land has been mine for 6 years. I've got the deed." "You've got the deed, and he's got a survey that contradicts it. In territorial court, that means a hearing. A hearing means lawyers. Lawyers mean money you don't have." Josie's voice stayed level, but her eyes were burning. "That's the game, Eli. He doesn't need to prove you wrong. He just needs to keep you in court long enough to break you." "Then what do we do?" "We prove the surveys are fraudulent." Josie opened the satchel and spread papers across the cabin table. "I compared every filing date against the deed records. 3 of the 6 surveys were dated before the properties were even purchased. That's impossible unless someone backdated them." "Can you prove that to a judge?" "I can prove it to anyone with eyes." She tapped a document. "But I need more. I need the original survey stakes, the physical markers in the ground. If Cobb's people move them to match the fraudulent surveys, there'll be evidence. Disturbed soil. New cut stakes replacing old ones. Those stakes are on my north boundary, 3 miles out. Then we go tomorrow. Josie, if Cobb finds out we're pulling his scheme apart, he won't sit patient anymore." "Good." Josie looked at him. "I'd rather face a man who's angry than one who's calculating. Angry men make mistakes." Eli wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she didn't understand what Cobb was capable of when he stopped being patient. But he looked at her face, set hard, jaw locked, and he knew arguing would waste breath neither of them had. "All right," he said. "Tomorrow." They never got to tomorrow. Eli woke to the smell of smoke. Not wood smoke, not fireplace smoke. Something bigger, something wrong. He was on his feet before his eyes fully opened. The cabin was dark. Josie's bedroll was empty. "Josie!" He heard her voice outside, screaming. "Eli, the barn!" He hit the door running. The barn was a wall of orange, flames climbing the walls, eating the roof, roaring with a sound like a living thing. The heat hit his face from 30 yards away. Josie was already at the barn door, hauling it open. Smoke poured out. The horses screamed inside. "Help me!" she shouted. They worked together. Eli grabbed the first horse, a big bay mare half crazy with fear, dragged her out by the halter. Josie went for the second one. "The mule!" Eli shouted. "Backstall! He won't come!" "I'll get him!" "Josie, the roof's going!" She was already inside. Eli got the third horse out, the fourth. The heat was unbearable. Sparks rained down. The roof beam groaned. "Josie!" Nothing. "Josie!" She appeared in the doorway, pulling the mule with one hand, her other arm pressed against her face. The mule fought her. She fought harder. The roof beam cracked. Eli saw it happen, saw the timber split, saw it start to fall, saw Josie look up. He moved, faster than his bad hip should have allowed, grabbed Josie's arm and pulled. Hard. The beam came down. It caught her left shoulder as she stumbled forward. The sound it made was wrong. Bone meeting wood, a crack that wasn't timber. Josie hit the ground. The mule bolted free. Eli dragged her away from the barn as the rest of the roof collapsed in a fountain of sparks and flame. "Josie! Josie, look at me!" Her face was white, shock white. Her left arm hung wrong. "My shoulder," she whispered. "Something's broken." "Don't move." "The horses, did we get them all?" "We got them all. Don't move." "The papers." Josie tried to sit up and screamed. "Eli, the papers, the surveys, they were in my satchel by the—" "I'll get them. They were by the barn wall." Eli looked. The satchel was 10 feet from the burning wreckage. He ran for it. The heat blistered his face. He grabbed the leather bag, felt the singed surface, and ran back. "Got it," he said. Josie's eyes were glazing, shock setting in. "Don't let me pass out. Talk to me." "You're going to be fine." "That's not talking. That's lying." She gritted her teeth. "Tell me something real." "I'm going to kill Cobb." "That's too real. Something else." "I can't lose you." Josie's eyes focused on his, sharp through the pain. "Then don't." Sam appeared at dawn. He'd seen the smoke from his place and ridden hard. He found Eli sitting on the ground beside Josie, his coat wrapped around her, his ruined hand holding hers. "How bad?" Sam asked. "Shoulder's broken. Maybe collarbone, too. She needs a doctor." "Helena's 3 hours." "Then we go, now." They rigged a travois behind Sam's horse. Josie bit through her lip to keep from screaming when they moved her. Eli rode beside her the whole way, one hand on the travois rail, steadying it over every rut and rock. "Eli," Josie said through clenched teeth. "Don't talk. Save your strength." "Eli, listen to me. Cobb burned that barn because he knows we found the surveys. Someone at the land office told him." "I know." "He's scared. That means we're close." "Josie, please stop talking." "He burned the evidence he thought we had. But we still have the originals, the ones I copied from the land office records." She winced hard. "They're in the satchel. Every date, every discrepancy. He doesn't know I made copies." Eli looked at her. Broken shoulder, face gray with pain, and she was still thinking 3 moves ahead. "You made copies." "First thing I did, before I even compared them." Josie closed her eyes. "My uncle taught me. Always copy the records before anyone knows you're looking, because records have a way of disappearing when powerful men get nervous." The doctor in Helena was a tired man named Fletcher, who smelled like whiskey and carbolic acid. He set Josie's shoulder while she gripped Eli's hand hard enough to leave bruises. "Collarbone's cracked," Fletcher said. "Shoulder dislocated and reset. She needs 4 weeks minimum without using that arm." "I need 2 days," Josie said. "You need 4 weeks." "Give me a sling and laudanum. I'll manage." "Ma'am, you'll damage it permanently if—" "I'll damage more than my shoulder if I don't finish what I started." Josie looked at Eli. "We don't have 4 weeks." Fletcher looked at Eli. Eli looked at Josie. He knew that expression. He'd seen it on soldiers' faces at Gettysburg. The ones who kept fighting after they should have fallen. The ones who ran on something deeper than strength. "Give her the sling," Eli said. "Mr. Tanner, I strongly advise—" "I heard you. So did she. Give her the sling." Fletcher wrapped the sling and handed over a small bottle of laudanum. 2 drops, no more. And if that bone shifts, you come straight back or you'll lose the use of that arm." They took a room at the boarding house. Josie collapsed on the bed and was asleep in seconds. Eli sat in the chair by the window, the satchel on his, staring at papers he couldn't read, but would die to protect. Sam sat across from him. "I'm going to kill him, Sam." "No, you're not. He burned my barn. He hurt her. He's been stealing my cattle and forging documents and squeezing every small rancher in this valley." Eli's voice was low, dangerous. "I'm going to ride out to his place and I'm going to put a bullet in him." "And then what?" Sam's voice stayed calm. "You go to prison. Josie's alone. Cobb's people take the ranch anyway. Everything she's fighting for dies because you couldn't control your anger." "Don't talk to me about control. I'm talking to you about winning." Sam leaned forward. "You taught me that 4 years ago, when those men came to burn my place because they didn't want a Crow man owning land near theirs. I wanted to fight. You told me fighting was losing. You told me to document everything, report everything, make the law work for me even when the law didn't want to. That was different." "How?" "Because it wasn't you lying in that bed with a broken shoulder." Sam was quiet for a long moment. "You love her." Eli's jaw clenched. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to. I've known you 4 years, Eli. You've never once talked about killing a man. Not even when Margaret married Thomas. Not even when the army left you half-crippled without a pension. You just swallowed it and moved on." Sam's eyes held steady. "But someone hurts this woman, and suddenly you're ready to throw everything away? That's not anger. That's love. And love makes you stupid if you let it." "So what do you want me to do? Sit here and wait?" "I want you to let her finish what she started. She's got the evidence. She's got the brains. She's got a case that could put Cobb in federal prison." Sam stood. "You want revenge? Give her the chance to destroy him legally. That's worse than a bullet, Eli. A bullet ends it quick. A courtroom makes it last forever." Eli looked at the bed where Josie slept. Her face was still pale, her breathing shallow. The sling held her arm close to her body like a wounded wing. "If she can't do it," Eli said, "if the law fails, if Cobb walks away from this, then we'll figure it out, together. But we try it her way first." Her way. Her way. Josie woke at midnight, found Eli still in the chair, still holding the satchel. "You haven't slept," she said. "Can't. Because you're planning something stupid." "Sam already talked me out of it." "Good. Sam's smarter than you." Josie shifted and hissed at the pain. "Hand me the satchel." "You need to rest. I need to work. Rest is for people who aren't being robbed." She held out her good hand. "The satchel, Eli." He gave it to her, watched her pull papers out one-handed, spreading them across the blanket. Her eyes moved fast, that same sharp focus she brought to everything. Even broken, she worked with a precision that made Eli's chest ache. "Here," she said after 20 minutes. "This is what we need." "What is it?" "The survey for Beecham's property, the one Cobb's lawyer filed 6 months ago." She held up 2 papers side by side. "The filing says it was conducted by a surveyor named J.W. Hartley, licensed territorial surveyor. But I checked the territorial registry in Helena yesterday. J.W. Hartley's license was revoked 2 years ago for fraud in a land dispute near Butte." "So the surveyor's a fraud." "The surveyor's a tool. Cobb hired a man he knew would produce whatever results he was paid to produce. And if Hartley's surveys are thrown out, every land claim based on those surveys collapses. All 6 of them. Including mine. Including yours. Including Beecham's. including every rancher Cobb forced to sell based on disputed boundaries. Josie looked at him. "This doesn't just save your ranch, Eli. It gives back everything Cobb stole." Eli sat on the edge of the bed, close enough to see the pain lines around her eyes, close enough to see the fire behind them. "How do we do this?" "We need a public hearing, not a closed courtroom where Cobb's money buys the outcome. A public hearing where every rancher in this valley can see the evidence." Josie's good hand clenched the papers. "We need the territorial judge, the real one, not Cobb's people. And we need every rancher who's been squeezed to stand up and say what happened to them. Most of them are scared. Most of them are alone. That's different from scared." Josie leaned back against the headboard. When people are alone, they think they're the only ones being hurt. When they find out it's happening to everyone, the fear turns into something else. What? Anger. And angry people fight. "You know this from experience?" "I know this from Kansas. My uncle spent 2 years thinking he was the only one the railroad company was targeting. When he finally talked to his neighbors, he found out they were all getting the same treatment. Same threats, same legal tricks, same isolation." Josie's voice roughened. "Within a month, they had a petition with 40 signatures. Within 2 months, they had a federal investigator. The railroad company never saw it coming because they never imagined the little people would talk to each other." Eli looked at her. Broken collarbone. Couldn't use her left arm. Hadn't slept more than 4 hours. And she was building a strategy to take down the most powerful man in the valley. "You're incredible," he said. "I'm angry. Incredible comes later." Josie shifted the papers. "We need Sam. He knows every rancher in this valley. He knows who's been hurt and who'll stand up. And we need to move fast before Cobb realizes his fire didn't destroy the evidence." "He'll come after us again." "Let him. Every time he acts, he creates more evidence, more witnesses, more reasons for a judge to pay attention." Josie met his eyes. "Men like Cobb think violence solves problems. It doesn't. It creates a trail, and trails lead somewhere." Eli reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away, just looked at him with those gray eyes that saw everything. "When this is over," he said, "when Cobb's finished and the ranch is safe." "Yeah?" "I'm going to ask you to stay. For real. Not a trial, not an arrangement." "You haven't even made it through the month yet." "To hell with the month." Something cracked in Josie's expression. Not her composure. Something underneath it. Something she'd been holding tight since that first day at the Stagecoach stop. "Don't say things you can't take back, Eli." "I'm saying it because I can't take it back. Don't want to." Josie closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. "Ask me when Cobb is finished," she whispered. "Ask me when we've won. Because I want to say yes to a man who's free, not one who's still fighting." "Is that a maybe?" "That's a when, Eli, not an if." He took her good hand, held it. Her grip was weaker than it had been at that Stagecoach stop, but it was still there, still sure. Outside the boarding house, Helena slept. Somewhere in the darkness, Cobb slept too, probably satisfied that the fire had broken them, probably already planning his next move. He didn't know about the copies, didn't know about the revoked surveyor's license, didn't know that the woman he'd tried to burn out was lying in a boarding house bed, one arm shattered, building the case that would end him. Josie squeezed Eli's hand. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we start a war." Eli didn't sleep. He sat in that chair and held her hand and watched her breathe, and made a promise to himself that he'd never made before. Not in the war, not after Margaret, not in 4 years of cold Montana silence. He promised himself he'd be worth it. Worth her staying. Worth her fighting. Worth every broken bone and burned barn and sleepless night she'd given to a man who couldn't even read his own name. He didn't know yet how to keep that promise. But he knew, with a certainty that felt like bedrock, that he'd spend the rest of his life trying. Sam rode out before sunrise. By noon, he'd visited 4 ranches. By nightfall, 7. He came back to the boarding house 2 days later, with a list of names written in his own careful hand. 14, he said, setting the paper on the bed where Josie could see it. 14 ranchers willing to come to a public hearing. 6 more who said, maybe, and 3 who told me to go to hell. Which 3? Josie asked. Beecham, Corley, and a man named Whitfield on the South Ridge. Beecham already sold to Cobb. Why would he refuse? Because Cobb paid him. Not much, but enough. And Beecham's scared that if the sales get reversed, he'll have to give the money back, and he's already spent it. Sam sat down. Corley's the same story. Whitfield's different. He's not scared. He's bought. Bought how? Cobb gave him water rights to the creek that runs through his property. In exchange, Whitfield looks the other way. Sam's voice went flat. He also told me that if we push this, he'll testify that the boundary disputes are legitimate, that Cobb's surveys are accurate. Josie's good hand tightened on the blanket. He'll lie under oath. He'll say what Cobb tells him to say. That's close enough. Eli stood by the window, arms folded, listening. So Cobb's got a witness who'll contradict everything we bring. One witness, Josie said, against 14 ranchers and documented evidence of a revoked surveyor. She looked at Sam. Whitfield's testimony won't hold, not if we present the Hartley evidence first. Once the judge sees that every survey was conducted by a man who lost his license for fraud, Whitfield's credibility collapses with it. You're assuming the judge is honest, Eli said. I'm assuming the judge likes his job more than he likes Cobb's money. There's a difference. And if you're wrong? Josie met his eyes. Then we lose. But we lose fighting, which is more than anyone in this valley has done before. The hearing was set for Thursday. Josie spent 3 days preparing. One-handed, running on laudanum and coffee and something harder than both. She organized every document, wrote summaries on separate sheets because not everyone at the hearing would understand legal filings. Rehearsed her presentation until she could deliver it without looking at a single page. Eli watched her work and felt useless. He couldn't read the documents, couldn't check her figures, couldn't help with the one thing that mattered most. Stop, Josie said on the second night. Stop what? Stop looking at me like you're failing. She set down her pen. You want to help? Go talk to Patterson. Go talk to Webb. Look them in the eye and tell them what Cobb did to our barn. Tell them what he's done to our cattle. Tell them what happens to every man in this valley if we don't stand up together. She paused. You can't read, Eli, but you can talk. And people trust you. They trust your word, your handshake, your face. That's worth more than any document I can write. Eli rode out the next morning. Found Patterson first. The old rancher was on his porch, cleaning a rifle that didn't need cleaning. Heard about your barn, Patterson said. Heard about your woman, too. Her shoulder's broken. And she's still fighting. She doesn't know how to stop. Patterson set the rifle down. I'll be there Thursday. Already told Sam I would. I need more than you showing up. I need you to talk. Tell the judge what Cobb did to you. The threats, the pressure, all of it. Patterson was quiet for a long time. I'm 71 years old, Tanner. Built this place with my wife. She died here. I plan to die here too. He looked at his hands. But if I stand up and Cobb wins anyway, he'll take everything I've got left, and I'll die with nothing. If you don't stand up, he takes it anyway, just slower. At least slow gives me time. Time for what? To watch it happen piece by piece? Eli stepped closer. Josie's got evidence that Cobb's surveys are fraudulent. Every single one. Filed by a surveyor who lost his license for doing the exact same thing in Butte. This isn't a maybe. This is proof. Proof doesn't always win. It does when enough people are standing behind it. Patterson looked at him. Looked hard. You've changed, Tanner.
Have I? 4 years I've known you. 4 years you've kept your head down, done your work, stayed out of everybody's business. Now you're riding around the valley asking men to risk everything on a fight you might lose. Patterson's eyes narrowed. That woman did this to you. That woman showed me what I was too stubborn to see myself. And what's that? That alone isn't strength. It's just slow surrender. Patterson picked up his rifle, set it back down, picked it up again. My wife used to say that. Almost those exact words. He stood. All right, Thursday. I'll talk. God help me, I'll talk. But if this goes sideways, Tanner, I'm blaming you and that red-haired woman of yours for the rest of whatever life I've got left. Fair enough. Eli visited 6 more ranchers that day. 4 said yes. 2 said no. One of the ones who refused, a young man named Dawson, had tears in his eyes when he said it. I can't, Dawson said. My wife's expecting. If Cobb comes after us, I can't protect her and a baby. Eli understood, didn't push. If we win, your land's safe. Your family's safe. If. Yeah, if. Dawson shook his head. That's not good enough. Not with a baby coming. Eli rode home, thinking about Dawson's face. Thinking about the weight of asking people to gamble everything on a fight led by a woman with a broken shoulder and a man who couldn't read. When he got back, Josie was sitting on the porch of the boarding house, her sling dirty, her face drawn with pain she was trying to hide. How many? She asked. 4 more yes, 2 no. That gives us 18, plus us, plus Sam. 21 people against the most powerful man in the territory. 21 people with the truth. That's enough. Josie stood carefully. Eli, there's something else. What? The territorial judge. His name is Aldridge. He's honest. Sam confirmed it. But he's also careful. He won't make a ruling based on my evidence alone. He'll want testimony, multiple witnesses saying the same thing. We've got 18 ranchers. I don't need 18. I need 3 or 4 strong ones. People the community respects. People a judge can't dismiss. She looked at him. I need you, Eli. Me? You're the one Cobb targeted hardest. The barn, the cattle, the fraudulent survey on your land. Your story is the anchor for everything else. Josie's eyes held his. Can you stand in front of a room full of people and tell them what happened to you? I've never been much for talking in crowds. I know. That's why it'll matter when you do. Thursday came cold and clear. The hearing was held in Helena's largest meeting hall, a converted warehouse that smelled like grain and old timber. Josie arrived early, her arm still bound, her documents organized in the satchel she carried with her good hand. Eli walked in beside her, Sam behind them. The room was already filling. Patterson sat in the front row, hat in his hands, looking like he might bolt at any second. Webb was beside him, steadier, jaw set. Ranchers filed in, one by one. Eli counted. 20, 22, 25. More than Sam had promised, more than anyone expected. Then Cobb walked in. He came with 3 men. His lawyer, Prescott, a pale man in a black suit who looked like he'd been carved from courthouse marble. A second man Eli didn't recognize, Cobb's bought witness. Cobb took a seat in the back row. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man who'd already won and was just watching the formalities play out. Judge Aldridge entered. He was 60, gray-haired, lean. He sat at the table at the front of the room and surveyed the crowd. "This is a territorial hearing regarding land disputes in the Bitterroot Valley," Aldridge said. "Mrs. Tanner has filed a formal complaint alleging fraudulent surveys and illegal seizure of property. Mr.
Prescott represents the Montana Land and Timber Company." He looked at Josie. "Mrs. Tanner, you may begin." Josie stood, one arm in a sling, papers in her good hand. She walked to the front of the room and faced 60 people, most of whom had never seen a woman stand before a judge and speak about anything more serious than a garden dispute. "Your Honor, I'm going to make this simple, because the truth is simple, even when powerful men try to make it complicated." She laid the first document on the judge's table. "This is the original deed for the Tanner Ranch, purchased 6 years ago. Boundaries clearly marked by a licensed territorial surveyor." She laid the second document beside it. "This is a survey filed 8 months ago by J.W. Hartley on behalf of the Montana Land and Timber Company. It shows the northern boundary of the Tanner Ranch, 100 yards south of the original deed." She paused. Let the room absorb it. "If Mr. Hartley's survey is accurate, then my husband doesn't own 100 acres he's been working, improving, and paying taxes on for 6 years. Those acres would belong to Judge Cobb's company." She looked at Aldridge. "But Mr. Hartley's survey is not accurate, because Mr. Hartley's surveyor license was revoked 2 years ago by the Territorial Board for filing fraudulent surveys in a land dispute near Butte." The room shifted, murmuring. Cobb's expression didn't change. Prescott's did. "Your Honor," Prescott stood, "the qualifications of the surveyor are not—" "Sit down, Mr. Prescott," Aldridge said. "You'll have your turn." He looked at Josie. "Continue." Josie laid out 5 more surveys. Same pattern, same surveyor, same impossible dates. Every one of these surveys was filed by J.W. Hartley. Every one shows boundary lines that favor the Montana Land and Timber Company. And 3 of them are dated before the original land purchases even occurred. Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake. "You don't survey land that hasn't been sold yet, unless the surveys were created after the fact and backdated to create legal disputes that would force small ranchers into court." "This is speculation," Prescott said. "It's arithmetic," Josie replied. "The dates don't lie, Mr. Prescott, even when the surveys do." Aldridge studied the documents. The room was silent. "I'd like to call witnesses," Josie said, "starting with my husband." Eli stood. His legs felt wrong, heavy. The room was too warm, too full, too many eyes. He walked to the front and stood beside Josie, and looked at a room full of people and wished to God he were anywhere else. "Mr. Tanner," Josie said. Her voice changed when she addressed him. Still professional, but underneath it, a warmth only he could hear. "Tell the judge what's happened to your ranch in the last 2 years." Eli's throat locked. He looked at the crowd. Patterson's weathered face. Webb's steady eyes. Sam in the back row, arms folded, nodding once. 2 years ago, my fences started getting cut, Eli said. His voice was rough, unused to this many ears. I thought it was weather at first. Wind, rot. But the cuts were clean. Wire, not wear. How many cattle have you lost? 70 head over 2 years. 30 in the last 6 weeks alone. Did you report it? Who to? The sheriff's office is in Helena.
By the time anyone rides out, the cattle are gone and the tracks are covered. Eli's hands clenched at his sides. 3 weeks ago, my barn was set on fire in the middle of the night. We barely got the animals out. Josie, Mrs. Tanner, broke her shoulder pulling the last mule from the building. He looked at Cobb, made himself look. I can't prove who did it, but I know that every bad thing that's happened to my ranch started after I refused to sell to the Montana Land and Timber Company. After I refused 3 times. Your Honor, Prescott stood again. Mr.
Tanner's claims are anecdotal. He has no proof connecting any of these events to my client. Your client's surveys are proof enough, Josie said. They establish a pattern, identify a target, pressure the owner. When the owner refuses to sell, file a fraudulent survey to create a legal dispute. And when the owner still refuses, escalate. She turned to the room. Mr. Patterson, will you speak? Patterson stood slowly. He looked old, tired, scared in a way that made Eli's chest hurt. 2 years ago, Patterson said, his voice thin but steady, a man came to my ranch and offered to buy my property. I said no. A week later, my water supply was diverted. Someone dammed the creek upstream. Took me 3 weeks to find it, and another 2 to fix it. By then, I'd lost 15 head to dehydration. Who made the offer? He said he represented a development company. Didn't give a name. But the letter he left had the Montana Land and Timber seal on it. Webb spoke next, then Collins, then a woman named Martha Greer, whose husband had died the previous winter, leaving her alone on a ranch that Cobb had been trying to buy for months. They told me a woman couldn't hold property rights, Martha said. Her voice shook with anger, not fear. Told me the deed was in my husband's name and I had no legal claim. That was a lie. I checked. My name is on that deed right beside his. Has been since the day we bought it. One by one they spoke. 11 ranchers in total. Each story different in the details. Each story the same in the bones. Pressure, intimidation, isolation. The slow, patient crushing of people who had no one to turn to. Then Prescott called Whitfield. Whitfield walked to the front with the stiff gait of a man carrying a weight he didn't want. He wouldn't look at the other ranchers. Wouldn't look at Josie. He spoke to the judge's table. The surveys are accurate, Whitfield said. I've worked this valley for 30 years. The boundary lines, Mr. Hartley documented match what I've always understood to be the property lines. Mr. Whitfield, Josie said, you received water rights from the Montana Land and Timber Company 6 months ago. Is that correct? Whitfield's jaw tightened. That's a separate matter. Is it? You received a significant benefit from the same company whose surveys you're now defending. Doesn't that seem like a conflict of interest? I'm telling the truth. You're telling a version of the truth that someone paid you to tell. Josie's voice stayed even. I don't blame you for it, Mr. Whitfield. I understand being scared. I understand taking what's offered when the alternative is losing everything. But I need you to look at the people in this room, your neighbors, people you've known for years. Whitfield didn't look. Look at them. He looked, slowly. And what he saw in those faces, not anger, not judgment, just exhaustion and hope and the desperate need for someone to do the right thing. Something in him cracked. I can't do this, Whitfield whispered. Mr. Whitfield, Prescott said sharply, you agreed to... I agreed to a lot of things I shouldn't have. Whitfield's voice broke. Cobb told me no one would fight back. Told me it was just business. Told me nobody would get hurt. He looked at Josie's sling. People got hurt. Mr. Whitfield, Judge Aldridge said carefully, are you changing your testimony? The room held its breath. Whitfield's hands shook. He looked at Cobb in the back row.
Cobb's expression was stone, cold. The face of a man calculating what it would cost to destroy one more person. "The surveys are wrong," Whitfield said. "Cobb told Hartley what boundaries to draw. I saw the correspondence. Letters between Cobb and Hartley laying out exactly which property lines to move and by how much."
The room erupted. "Order!" Aldridge called. "Order!"
"Those letters," Josie said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Do you still have them?" "They're in my house, hidden under the floorboards in my bedroom. I kept them because I knew someday this would happen. I knew someday someone would be brave enough to do what I couldn't." Whitfield was crying now. "I'm sorry. God, I'm sorry. I took his money and his water, and I told myself it was survival. But watching you people stand up here, one after another, telling the truth while I sat on a lie..." He wiped his face. "I can't do it. I won't." Prescott stood. "Your Honor, this witness is clearly compromised and—" "This witness just gave me grounds for a full criminal investigation," Aldridge said. His voice was iron. "Mr. Prescott, I'm issuing an immediate injunction against all property claims filed by the Montana Land and Timber Company. I'm ordering the seizure of the letters Mr. Whitfield described,
And I'm referring this matter to the federal prosecutor's office for charges of land fraud, intimidation, and destruction of property." He looked at Cobb. "Mr. Cobb, I've advised you to retain a very good attorney. You're going to need one." Cobb stood. For the first time, his composure cracked. He looked at Josie, not with anger, with something closer to disbelief. "You're a mail-order bride," he said. "You're nobody." Josie met his stare. "I'm the nobody who just ended you." Cobb walked out. The door closed behind him with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. For a long moment the room was silent. Then Patterson started clapping. His old hands, slow and steady. Webb joined. Then Collins. Then Martha Greer. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet. Josie stood at the front, broken arm bound to her chest, exhausted, overwhelmed. She reached for Eli's hand and held it tight. "We did it," Eli said. "No." Josie's eyes were streaming. She didn't bother wiping them. "They did it." She looked at the ranchers, Patterson, Webb, Whitfield, still crying in his chair, Martha Greer, with her chin held high. "They stood up. That's the only reason any of this worked." They walked out of the hall into cold afternoon light. Sam was waiting by the horses. "Well," Sam said, "Aldridge ordered a full investigation. Federal charges coming." Sam nodded, slow, satisfied. "Good." "Sam," Josie said, "thank you for riding to every ranch, for getting people to come, for writing Eli's letters in the first place. None of this happens without you." Sam looked at her for a long time. "My grandmother used to say that the right person in the right place at the right time can change everything. She also said you don't get to choose when that is." He looked at Eli. "You wrote that first letter yourself, the one with the bad spelling and the shaky hand. That's the one she read. That's the one that brought her here." Eli's throat closed. "The right person," Sam said. "The right place. The right time." He mounted his horse. "Take care of each other. You've earned it." He rode east toward his own land, and Eli watched him go and thought about letters and timing and the terrifying miracle of being seen by someone who chose to stay. Josie leaned against him, her good shoulder pressed against his arm. "Take me home, Eli." "The cabin barely has a roof." "It's got walls and a fireplace, and it's ours. Take me home." They rode back to the ranch in fading light. The ruins of the barn stood like broken teeth against the sky. The cabin was smoke-stained, half-roofed,
cold. But when Eli lifted Josie down from the wagon, and she stood on that hard Montana ground and looked at what they had left, she smiled. "It's still here," she said. "It's not much." "It's everything." She turned to him. "Every bit of it. Because it's ours, and nobody's taking it. Not Cobb, not his lawyers, not anyone." Eli pulled her close, careful of her shoulder, careful of everything. She came without hesitation, pressed her face against his chest. "Josie." "Yeah." "Cobb called you nobody." "I heard." "He was wrong. You're the bravest person I've ever known. Braver than any soldier I fought beside. Braver than anyone." "I'm not brave, Eli. I'm stubborn. There's a difference." "No, there isn't." She laughed, a real laugh, rough and tired and broken at the edges, but real. The first real laugh he'd heard from her since the fire. "All right," she said. "Maybe there isn't." They stood together in the cold, holding each other. Two people who'd walked through fire, and litigation, and fear, and come out the other side still standing, still together, still choosing each other even when every rational thought said the smart thing was to quit. That night, Eli built a fire in the damaged cabin, and Josie fell asleep beside it, her good hand still holding his. And Eli lay awake, listening to her breathe, and thinking about what Sam had said. The right person, the right place, the right time. He tightened his grip on her hand and let himself believe, for the first time in his life, that maybe he deserved all three. Webb showed up 3 days later with a wagon full of lumber. Didn't knock, didn't ask, just started unloading like it was the most natural thing in the world. "What's this?" Eli asked from the porch. "Barnwood. Had extra from my spring build." Webb dropped a plank onto the pile. "Figured you could use it." "I can't pay you for this." "Did I ask?" Webb looked at him square. "What you and your wife did in that hearing room, that protected every ranch in this valley. This is how we say thank you." Patterson arrived the next morning, brought roofing tin, nails, and 2 hired hands who refused payment. "They work for principle," Patterson said. "Same as the rest of us." By the end of the week, 11 ranchers had contributed something: lumber, tools, labor, food. A woman named Eleanor Briggs rode over with a wagon full of preserved vegetables and a quilt she'd sewn herself. "For the cold nights," Eleanor said, pressing it into Josie's good hand. "My mother made quilts for every new family in the valley. I'm carrying on the tradition." Josie held the quilt against her chest and didn't speak for a long moment. "I've never had a community before," she said finally. "Not like this." "You do now." Eleanor squeezed her arm. "Get used to it." The barn frame went up in 4 days. 12 men working from dawn to dark, raising walls and beams, while Josie sat on an overturned bucket, calling out measurements and corrections, with the authority of a woman who'd been reading building specs since she was old enough to hold a pencil. "That crossbeam's off by 2 inches, she called to Webb. "Ma'am, I've been building barns for 30 years. "And that beam is still off by 2 inches. Webb measured, swore under his breath, adjusted. "Thank you," Josie said sweetly. Sam appeared beside Eli, watching the work. "She's something. She's impossible." "Same thing." The barn took 2 weeks. Solid, square, better than the one Cobb had burned. When the last nail was driven, Patterson stepped back and looked at it with the kind of satisfaction that only comes from building something for someone else. "Not bad," he said. "Not bad?" Josie shook her head. "Is that a Bitterroot Valley thing? This barn is twice the size of the old one, and you people built it for free, and all anyone can say is, 'Not bad'?" Patterson almost smiled. "We don't do compliments out here, Mrs. Tanner. We do work." "I've noticed." That night, After the last rancher rode home, Eli and Josie sat on the porch and watched the sun go down behind the new barn. Josie's sling was off, still caught when she reached too far, but she could use the arm. Dr. Fletcher had called it a miracle. Josie called it stubbornness. Eli called it both. "The month's up," Josie said quietly. Eli looked at her. "What?" "The 1-month trial. It ended 4 days ago. Neither of us mentioned it." Eli was quiet. She was right. The deadline had passed without either of them noticing. Somewhere between the fire and the hearing and the rebuilding, the trial had stopped being a trial and started being a life. "Guess it doesn't matter anymore," he said. "It matters. We made a deal. I said if I lasted 30 days, we'd sit down and have an honest conversation about what comes next." Josie turned to face him. "So let's have it." "All right." "I'll go first." Josie took a breath. "I came here expecting to work, expecting to prove myself, expecting to earn a place on this ranch through sweat and competence and sheer refusal to quit." She paused. "I didn't expect you. Me. You, Eli Tanner, the man who can't read, but can track a steer through a blizzard by instinct. The man who pulled me out of a burning barn with a hip full of shrapnel. The man who rode to 7 ranches in one day, asking neighbors to trust him, even though trusting people is the thing that scares him most." Her voice softened. "I didn't expect to feel safe with someone. I haven't felt safe since my mama died." Eli's chest went tight. "Josie, your turn." He looked at his hands. 3 fingers on the left, 5 on the right. Scarred, rough, hands that had held rifles and reins and dying men, and nothing gentle for a very long time. "I asked for someone plain because I thought plain meant safe. Thought if I didn't care too much, it wouldn't hurt when she left." He swallowed. "Then you stepped off that stage, and I panicked. Because you weren't safe. You were terrifying. And not because of how you looked, because of how you saw me." "How do I see you? Like I'm worth something. Like the scars and the missing fingers and the fact that I can't read my own name don't add up to what I'm worth. Like there's something underneath all that damage that's still good." His voice broke. "Nobody's looked at me like that since before the war. And I didn't know what to do with it. Still don't. You could start by accepting it." "I'm trying." "Try harder." Josie took his ruined hand, held it. "Because I'm not leaving, Eli. Not today, not next month, not when winter comes, or when the money's tight, or when you wake up at 3 in the morning from whatever the war put in your head that won't let you sleep. You know about that? You talk in your sleep. Have since the first night." Josie's thumb traced the scars on his knuckles. "You call for someone named Thomas. Then you stop calling and just go quiet. That quiet is worse than the calling." Eli closed his eyes. "Thomas is my brother. I know, even in my dreams I can't get away from what he did." "You don't have to get away from it. You just have to stop letting it decide who you trust." Josie squeezed his hand. "I'm not Margaret, Eli, and you're not the man she left. You're the man who built something after she broke you. That man is worth staying for." Josie Calloway. "Yeah?" "Marry me." "We're already supposed to be married. That was the whole arrangement." "I don't want the arrangement. I want you to choose it. Choose me. Not because an agency matched us. Not because you needed to get out of Kansas. Because you want this. Want us." Josie was quiet for a long time. The wind picked up. The new barn creaked in the way new wood does when it's settling into itself. "When I was 22, she said, A banker's son asked me to marry him. He had money, education, a future that didn't involve freezing in Montana, or hauling rocks, or getting my shoulder broken by a burning roof beam. She looked at Eli.
I would have been comfortable, safe, taken care of. Why didn't you do it? Because comfortable isn't the same as alive. And being taken care of isn't the same as being valued. Josie stood, pulled him up with her. Yes, Eli, I'll marry you. Not because I need to. Because you're the first person who ever made me feel like I was enough, exactly as I am. Eli kissed her. She kissed him back. It wasn't gentle or careful or any of the things a first kiss is supposed to be. It was two people who'd been holding themselves apart for so long that the coming together felt like a dam breaking. When they pulled apart, Josie's eyes were wet. That was terrible, she said. I know. I haven't kissed anyone in 6 years. Practice helps. Yeah? Yeah. He kissed her again. Better this time. They got married on a Tuesday morning in the Helena church. Sam stood as witness. Patterson and Webb sat in the front row. Martha Greer brought flowers from her garden, the last ones before frost killed them. The preacher was old, half-deaf, and had to ask Eli to repeat his vows twice. Josie laughed both times, not at Eli, at the absurdity of it, at the beautiful, ridiculous, improbable fact that she was standing in a Montana church, marrying a man who couldn't read, who was missing 2 fingers, who had nightmares about his brother, and who she loved with a ferocity that made her chest hurt. Do you take this woman? The preacher asked. I do. Do you take this man? I already did, about 30 days ago. This is just making it official. The preacher blinked. Is that a yes? That's a yes. They rode back to the ranch as husband and wife, real husband and wife. The cabin had a new roof, courtesy of Collins and his crew. The barn stood tall against the evening sky. The cattle grazed the north pasture, every head accounted for. Home, Josie said. Home, Eli agreed. Winter came, hard and fast and brutal, the way Montana winters do. But this time, Eli wasn't alone in it. Josie managed the finances, the feed schedules, the supply runs. Eli managed the cattle, the horses, the physical work of keeping a ranch alive when the temperature dropped to 30 below. And every night, after the work was done, and the fire was burning, and the wind was trying to tear the cabin apart, Josie sat across from Eli at the table and taught him to read. She started with his name, E-L-I. 3 letters scratched in charcoal on a flat board. That's you, she said. He stared at the shapes. Doesn't look like much. It's a start. Everything starts small. She was patient. Not soft, not gentle. Patient the way a good teacher is, repeating without frustration, correcting without judgment, pushing without breaking. Some nights, Eli wanted to throw the board across the room. Some nights, the letters swam and tangled and refused to make sense no matter how long he stared. Some nights, the shame was so thick he could taste it. I'm too old for this, he said one night in January, his head in his hands. You're too stubborn for this. There's a difference. And stubborn doesn't quit. How do you know? Because you didn't quit the war. Didn't quit the ranch. Didn't quit me when every instinct told you to. Josie tapped the board. Read it again. By February, he could read simple words. By March, sentences. By April, when the snow finally broke, Eli Tanner read his own property deed for the first time in his life. Every word, every boundary, every legal phrase that had been just shapes on paper for 6 years. He sat at the table with the deed in his hands,
and cried. Not much, not loud, just enough. Josie sat beside him and didn't say a word. Didn't need to. She just put her hand on his back and let him feel what it meant to reclaim something he'd lost before he ever knew he had it. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me. You did the work. You showed me how. That's what partners do."
Spring brought more than warmth. The federal investigation into Cobb's land scheme concluded in April. 3 executives of the Montana Land and Timber Company were indicted. Cobb himself faced 12 charges of fraud, intimidation, and destruction of property. He never stood trial. 2 days before his hearing, Cobb sold everything he owned, paid restitution to the ranchers he'd defrauded, and left Montana on the morning stage. A letter arrived at the Tanner Ranch a week later. Short, bitter, final. "I underestimated you," it read. "Both of you. That won't happen again." Eli read it himself, every word. Then he folded it up and put it in the stove. "What did it say?" Josie asked. "Nothing worth keeping." The ranch grew. Through spring and summer, they expanded the herd, improved the bloodlines, rebuilt every fence Cobb's people had cut. Josie started a small business on the side, compiling weekly market reports for neighboring ranchers. Prices, supply routes, buyer information. She charged $1 a month per ranch and had 12 subscribers by June. "You're a businesswoman," Eli said, watching her write reports by lamplight. "I'm a rancher's wife who's good with numbers. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Probably not." Sam came for supper every Sunday. He and Josie argued about everything. Politics, cattle prices, the correct way to build a fence. Eli sat between them and ate and listened, and felt something he'd forgotten the name for. Family. That's what this was. Not blood. Chosen. The kind of family you build when you're brave enough to stop being alone. In September, a year and 2 days after Josie had stepped off that stagecoach, she told Eli she was pregnant. They were in the barn. She said it the same way she said everything. Direct. No preamble. No softening. "I'm carrying a child, Eli." He dropped the saddle he was holding. "When?" "Spring. April, maybe May." "Are you sure?" "I've known for 3 weeks. Wanted to be certain before I told you." 3 weeks? Eli picked up the saddle, set it down, picked it up again. "You've been hauling water and splitting wood and riding fence for 3 weeks knowing you were pregnant, not sick. Women have been working through pregnancy since the beginning of time." "Josie, don't you dare get protective on me, Eli Tanner. I will tell you when I need to stop. I will tell you when something's wrong. And until I do, you treat me the same as you always have." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because everything just changed." Josie's expression shifted. Underneath the firmness, underneath the no-nonsense armor she wore like a second skin, something soft moved across her face. "Yeah," she said quietly. "It did." Eli crossed the barn in 3 steps and held her. Careful, the way you hold something you're terrified of breaking. "I'm scared," Josie whispered into his chest. "Of what?" "My mama died in childbirth. My aunt nearly did. It runs in families." "We'll have the best midwife in the territory." "What if that's not enough?" "Then I'll be right there, and I'm not leaving, not for a second." "You promise?" "Josie, I promise on everything I am and everything you've made me." She pulled back. Her eyes were wet. "When did you get so good at words?" "I had a good teacher." The baby came in April, just like Josie had predicted. A girl, born healthy, after 16 hours of labor that aged Eli 10 years. Sam sat on the porch the entire time,
whittling a piece of cedar into something that slowly took the shape of a horse. Patterson and Webb waited with him. Martha Greer assisted the midwife. When Eli heard the cry, sharp and angry and alive, his knees gave out.
He sat on the floor beside the bed and held Josie's hand and looked at the small, furious creature the midwife placed on Josie's chest. "She's got your hair," Josie said, exhausted, laughing, crying all at once. "Red as fire." "She's got your stubbornness. Listen to her." The baby screamed like she was already arguing with the world. "What do we call her?" Josie asked. Eli looked at his daughter. This impossible thing. This life that existed because a scarred rancher had written a shaky letter to a mail-order agency, and a woman from Kansas had been brave enough to answer it. "Hope," he said. "Her name is Hope." "That's perfect." Sam came in, saw the baby, and nodded once. "She'll be trouble." "Like her mother," Eli said. "Like both of you." Sam set the cedar horse on the bedside table. "First toy, Crow tradition. Every child needs a horse before they need anything else." Josie took Sam's hand. "Uncle Sam." "Don't call me that." "Uncle Sam, it's decided." Sam looked at Eli for help. Eli shrugged. "When she decides something, it stays decided. You know that by now." "Lord help this child," Sam muttered. But he was smiling. Really smiling. The first full smile Eli had ever seen on his face. Years passed. The ranch became what Eli had never dared to imagine it could be. 300 head, good horses, a second cabin for the hands they could finally afford to hire. Hope grew fast, stubborn and curious, reading by age 4 because Josie started her early, and because she had her mother's mind and her father's refusal to quit. One evening, when Hope was 5, a traveler stopped at the ranch, asking directions to Helena. He looked at the spread, the barns, the cattle, the children playing in the yard. Hope and her younger brother Thomas, named for the brother Eli had finally forgiven, in a letter he wrote himself. Every word, every painful letter, and mailed without telling Josie until after it was done. "Fine place you've got here," the traveler said. "We built it," Josie replied. She was standing on the porch, Thomas on her hip, watching Hope chase a barn cat through the yard. "Must have taken years." "It took everything, but it's ours." The traveler tipped his hat and rode on. Eli walked up from the pasture, dusty, tired, moving slower than he used to because the hip never did stop hurting and probably never would. "Who was that?" he asked. "Nobody, just passing through." Josie handed him the baby. Thomas grabbed Eli's collar and babbled something that might have been a word. "He's trying to talk," Eli said. "He's been trying for a week. He'll get there." "Like his father." "Like his father." Josie leaned against the porch rail. "Eli." "Yeah?" "Do you ever think about that first day? The stagecoach?" "Every day." "What do you think about?" "I think about a man who almost made the worst mistake of his life, who almost turned around and rode away from the best thing that ever happened to him because he was too scared and too broken to believe he deserved it." "And now?" "Now I think maybe deserving isn't the point. Maybe the point is choosing, every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Josie smiled. Not the careful, guarded expression she'd worn that first day at the station. A real smile. Open. Full. The kind of smile that only comes from years of being seen and valued and chosen by someone who means it. "Read to me tonight," she said. "What do you want to hear?" "Anything. I just like hearing your voice do it." That night, after the children were asleep and the ranch was quiet, Eli sat by the fire and read aloud from a book Sam had given him. His voice was slow, careful. He still stumbled on the longer words. But he read. Every sentence.
every page. Josie listened with her eyes closed, her head on his shoulder, her breathing slow and steady.
And Eli kept reading. This was what she'd given him. Not just literacy, not just a ranch or a family or a life he'd never thought he'd have. She'd given him his own voice back. And he would spend every day he had left using it. For her. For their children. For the life they'd built out of ash and stubbornness and the terrifying, beautiful choice to stay. The Tanner Ranch still stands in the Bitterroot Valley. Different name on the deed now, different cattle in the pasture. But the locals still call it the Tanner Place. Still tell the story of the mail-order bride who was supposed to be plain and the three-fingered rancher who almost sent her away. They tell it to their children. Their children tell it to theirs. And the story always ends the same way. Not with a kiss. Not with a sunset. Not with any of the soft, easy things people expect from love stories. It ends with two people standing in the dirt, side by side, hands rough from work, eyes clear from honesty, choosing each other one more time. Because that's what love is. Not a feeling, not a promise, not a moment that sweeps you off your feet and carries you somewhere safe. Love is a choice you make with your whole body, every single day. And the Tanners made it every day for the rest of their lives.